labour such a challenging but also rewarding part of the industry, I think rethink, grow and develop as a theme is absolutely relevant to you guys. It's great to have such a fantastic members of the farming community, some faces that you will know here around me and others that you won't. But firstly, and I will call you local dairy farmers, Dave and Penny Conn, and some people will go, hang on, no they're not, but yes they are local, whose footprint has extended across Southeast Australia, as you'll see shortly. But also Aubrey Pellet, who's made a great contribution to the industry both at farm level but also at industry level and in agribusiness, but also equally in board roles as well. So has made a huge contribution to the industry over the last 20, 30 years. And Tim Gelbart, of course, whose name is synonymous with Gippsland Dairy, I think, really. And that's not the milk brand, but dairying in Gippsland. Whose family, but also Tim's made a great contribution to the industry. So really, today is about listening to their stories and hearing probably that they don't do it perfectly, but they do it well, probably really well, and maybe to some people really, really well, because their stories are phenomenal and their structures and their businesses are pretty impressive. And I don't want anyone here that's perhaps milking a smaller number of cows to go away thinking this is about big, this is about, you've got to be big to be good, or you've got to grow to be, successful. It's actually hearing about the stories of these people and their businesses and what they've done to work for them and hopefully work for them in both their business lives but also their personal lives. So without any further ado, we'll jump into that. Aubrey, up on the screen, and you don't have to look because you know your business well, but I've put the details there of your farm. Can you just give us a brief overview of your farm, and then we'll jump into your labour structure as well?
Okay, is it turned on? Thanks, Matt. So we're at a little place called Hill End. We are largely pasture based, a small amount of irrigation. I quite enjoy growing things, so I've over the years started to still have as much pasture as I can get, but I like to grow other crops and try to make them pay. We've developed a system really where we don't use many contractors and have started to do everything ourselves, which I think I've said to Matt in the past has actually resulted in a more complicated farming system than what I started off with 20 years ago, when I thought I'm not going to own any piece of equipment and it's going to be all pasture. And I'm originally from New Zealand, as some people know, and so now I'm really doing completely the opposite to that.
Now, Aubrey, we caught up, and I think it was a couple of years ago now, and dissected your labour structure at the time and really decided that there was a pathway for you which probably involved some overseas people, and I've put your structure up there now on the screen. What's evolved with that labour structure?
So I guess it's worth saying, previous to that, well, I've been farming just over 20 years. We've always employed people. When I was younger, and Jackie was younger, we had less labour, and we had a couple work for us for probably 12 years, and that worked reasonably well. So this structure here is in the last 6-7 months really, but we talked to Matt about moving, Jackie and myself, thinking, well, actually the reality is we're getting older, physically finding it more difficult. What used to seem easy now is less appealing, and also even a bit mentally, probably fair to say, less resilient than in the past. So the ambition was, I'd like to have largely the day-to-day farming operation, so milking, feeding cows, largely the day-to-day stuff just covered off, that I can keep an eye on. I still want to be farming, I still want to be there. I don't want a farm manager for various reasons just yet. So this structure here is what we ended up with, and two of those people are internationals, Abdullah and Jerry.
So I might come back to that in terms of how you found that process, but thanks for that overview, Aubrey. Sorry, wrong way. Dave and Penny, give us a little bit of an overview. Again, it's up there on the screen. You know your businesses quite well, but as I said, your footprint has extended. Give us a little bit of background and current. Fire away.
That's working?
Yep, all good.
Where do I start? I suppose I started milking cows when I was about 19, milking 93 cows for my father and mother. It's a share farm situation, and it's developed to this. A lot of debt, as everyone. The structure sort of evolved over the years. We realised earlier on we wanted to build a business like this, so we had to get good at employing labour and doing a lot of these things. What are you after, Matt?
I'm going to put the next screen up, and I was going to hold off on this, but it probably will blow some people's minds a little bit. There is your business on a slide, and you started 93 cows, 90 cows, share farmers at Headley. Siri wants to know how to milk 90 cows in the share farm arrangement.
It wasn't silent. So I suppose as opportunities come along, we've taken them. I love looking at real estate windows, so comparing prices. Started in Gippsland, went to Flinders Island 20 years ago. Land was cheap. Thought it was good country, good opportunities, and we've grown to what it is. We've been lucky. Farms have come up next door and we've acquired them as they've come up. We've always
been very keen, always kept an eye out for opportunities.
Went to the Western District 5-6 years ago. That's been very good too. Got it's all about people too. We've got very good key people, managers and share farmers, which has made the difference.
So can you give us a little bit of an overview, because I presume people can see that structure at the back. You've got a mix of different structures within that tree of or mesh of businesses. Roughly speaking, how are they employed? How are they structured in those business units?
The dairy in Gippsland, we've got 2 dairies in Gippsland. One's a contract manager, which John Mulvaney and Matt set that up years ago. Just excellent. This person owns all machinery and employs all labour, and we pay him enough for depreciation and to employ labour and for his own labour. We've got a 50-50 one here in Gippsland, which we're about to shut down. We're going to run beef cattle from Flinders Island up to here. So the bloke that was contract manager on the Gippsland stuff, he's now going to become our beef manager here, and we're employing another young bloke who's going to be 50-50 share milker on that farm. The Flinders Island stuff, Penny and myself have run one place there, about 1,900 cows for the last. It's built to 1,900 cows up to about 18 months ago. Our son's just come home. He's going to look after. He's got his own place, going to look after ours, and we've also got a contract manager on a 1,400 cow unit down there. Same as the dairy here in Gippsland. He owns all machinery and employs all labour. So there's a contract manager, our property, and our son's going to run his and our place that we're running and oversee that part of the operation. The Western District stuff, we've got there's a 50-50 share milker out there, 2 units. One's about, I think it's 1,200 cows roughly on 2 units out there. We also bought another property off a corporate 12 months ago. The only way we could be able to buy it was to lease it back to him. They wanted to still run the property. So we bought it, basically land banked it. We hope to get that back the next year or two. And then we've just bought another run-out paddock a bit further away. So we've probably got 1,400 cows out there that we'll be directly controlling, or our share farm will. And then eventually it'll go to about 1,800 cows over the next couple of years, we hope. So. And then a bit of commercial stuff in Launceston.
So I'm going to come back to that, and I'm going to certainly quiz Penny about what works and what doesn't work with that. But we'll hear Tim's story as well, and then we'll launch into some more varied questions. So Tim, give us an overview. Quite a few here may know a bit of your story and background, but for those that don't, can you give us a little bit of insight into Gelbart Dairies?
Sure, thanks Matt. Our family business, Dad started in '79 with Mum, milking 100 cows. Quite quickly grew over the sort of next decade into the early 90s, milking 300 cows. Obviously grew up on the farm and went to school in Melbourne, and was actually away from the dairy for 10 years, doing commercial agricultural valuations all over Australia. Lived in Sydney for 5 years. Unfortunately, lost Mum in 2014, and we'd started the succession planning probably about 2012 before we knew Mum was sick. And then, unfortunately, 6 months after Mum passed away, Dad developed a similar situation, so that really accelerated the succession planning that, potentially we got 3 months to get this sorted out. Thankfully, all three of the boys, I've got 2 older brothers, have all external jobs. My eldest brother's a builder, middle brother's sells veggie seeds commercially all over Australia and New Zealand. So all of us had jobs outside of the dairy, which I think really helped. I always wanted to come back, probably just not when I did. It was a bit earlier than I thought. Luckily, they had external jobs. I wanted to come back. We're all really good mates, so succession was easy. And then it's just been a very steep learning curve straight into the milk price crash when I came back. And then thankfully benefited from a few recent good seasons and just fine-tune management and what we do.
So Tim, I'm going to put your structure up now on the screen, because you've got quite a range of people and positions in the business, and that formalised structure, as I think you sort of touched on there with the succession plan. So you might, can you talk us through some of those positions? Because if people can see, there is quite a bit of tenure in there. We hear all the time about people not being able to retain labour or attract labour. From your pictures up there, it doesn't look like you have a big issue.
No, you missed the mechanic, 15 and a half years. Actually 27. Look, I think some things really resonated with me the short time I had with Dad when I was back on the farm. But one comment he made to me is, remember, your workers work to live. They don't live to work like farm owners do. And I think that stuck with me the whole time, that if you're asking someone to come in on a Friday night or do 2 weekends straight, they've got families, they've got people they need to get home to, other commitments just like we do. We get the benefit of asset growth and wealth and the joy of creating a business. They don't necessarily have that, so you need to understand that they've got families and lives too. So that really resonated with me. Although I don't do very many milkings, I do nearly everything else on the farm, and I'm there every day. People see me with my hands dirty and down in the effluent pond, whatever it is, I'm there doing the jobs, covering silage pits with everyone else. And just respecting that they're people. They have lives, and I probably spend a day a week just talking to staff. Like, if you added up all the 15, 20-minute chats throughout the week across the 20 staff, pretty quickly you wonder what you've achieved for the day, but you've probably put out 3 fires that might have festered into a disaster 2 weeks later because someone's annoyed that they've had a crappy morning. And just being heard, I think, is as much anything that people want to be heard. And if you're not there and you don't care and you just rock up every now and then, that's when the issues have developed. It's already past the point of repair. They're sick of it. I'm gone. I'm done. So, yeah.
So is that part of the longevity of your staffing system? Do you think they feel that value that you obviously have in them? You have that value. You've just explained that. Do you think they feel that value, and is that part of the retention of staff?
I'm very open with our staff. There's not many things that they don't know. There's certain things they don't know, but I'm always communicating what's happening on the farm in the next 12 months and how we've gone and what our major pinch points are. You know, we had quality issues with milk, so let's bring the whole team together and work through that program. And we've been fortunate to have people there that were there long before. Like I said, our mechanic started in '96, so started as milking cows, and so he's almost been there longer than I have. We has. So we've been fortunate to have a few people that have long tenure, but people generally seem happy. The one thing I've noticed the last 3 or 4 years, you walk to the lunchroom and you hear laughter, people chatting, and I'm not there saying, get to work, go and do your jobs. Very rarely do I raise my voice unless someone's riding a motorbike without a helmet or they haven't checked the oil in the bike. But just having a conversation, like in the corporate space, and I guess I've had that benefit, you have the water cooler chats. You know, you get that, I'm standing around for 10 minutes or not actually doing anything. Yes, it's a wasted 10 minutes and we probably pay a bit more for labour than what most do, but people are fresh, and when you expect them to work, they'll work because they just had a break. Before milking, they're about to embark in 5.5 hours of milking cows without a break. So if they spend 40 minutes before milking just having a chat and not being 100% productive, well, does it really matter at the end of the day? Is that 40 minutes going to make or break the business? Probably not. If they're not there milking the cows, that will have a bigger impact.
Thanks, Tim. Penny, you've got a different structure of employment and engagement than what Tim does, and to what Aubrey does, but you've got really good length of longevity or length of employment. How do you deal with it in a similar way to Tim?
I totally agree with what Tim has said. You know, we make a point of trying to listen to our staff and even preempting some of the things they want. You know, one example, one of our staff members, you know, he ended up going back for the third child, got 4 with twins. We built on an extra bathroom and an extra bedroom. He never even asked. But we knew long term, and he's still with us, he's been with us the best part of 20 years, that's what he needed. And he, you know, and it was, oh, well, it's our fault we keep pumping out kids. Yeah, but you've got 4 girls. You're going to need another bathroom. You know? Yeah, exactly. And one of them, yes, definitely. So, yeah, I mean, people management is key, and looking after them. And it's often not about the money. It's about that feeling of being valued and you know, I mean, we actually have people that come to us wanting work, and you know, most of our managers are people that we've known for a long time or have heard about us and have said, we want to come work for you. Can you find us a place? And you know, to extent at one stage we were looking for a farm for a young bloke. I mean, we didn't end up finding it, but we kept him in mind, and he is about to start with us in the next few weeks. So yeah, I mean, it's just about looking after people.
Aubrey, you've been down this pathway, and as I mentioned before, and I'll put it back up there just so people can see that, I think really probably trying to approach it in the way that these guys have. Has it worked for you? You know, do the best laid plans play out, or do things not always go to plan?
The short answer is it hasn't worked. And I was just going to say, so up until this structure, we've been farming just over 20 years. We've never advertised either. And we always had people knock on the door at the right time, want a job, or someone knew of someone. And I guess I wouldn't say you get lazy, but I've probably assumed, or I didn't realise how things had changed so much in the background. And so I don't think this has anything to do with COVID either, that when we decided we wanted to change our staffing structure, all of a sudden there was just nobody to be found. We used a Warragul-based recruitment company, and after 2 months they could give us 0 people to even interview. And so that was a bit of a shock. And the international option really, I wouldn't say it was my preference, but I had heard a few farmers and their experiences, and so I thought, okay, maybe this is going to work. And we were enthusiastic, and there's a couple of learnings out of that, Matt. One was it took a very long time to from when we interviewed the people to when they actually arrived on farm. Took a very long time. I'm talking 6 to 9 months, and in the meantime that nearly killed us because we were covering everything ourselves. And you get to the point where you think I don't want to do this anymore, and then you're actually doing more of it than you ever have for that period of time. But anyway, the two internationals have come to Australia on a skilled visa, so they have experience milking cows, and that's what we wanted. We actually want people, okay, you can milk, we'll tell you how our system runs and the differences between where you may have worked before and what we expect, etc., etc. One of them worked in Saudi Arabia on a very large dairy farm. The other one had worked in Japan. So I knew they probably didn't know much about pasture and grazing, and that was fine. But the reality is they have really struggled, and so we have been very frustrated. They're both individually very nice people, get on great with them, but I haven't quite worked out what it is about why they might do some things and don't do other things. And they definitely, there's lots of overlaying levels of subtlety, some of it's cultural, some of it is the farming system, some of it is they've worked in teams of 700 people, so they're not very, it was a shock to them to have the boss, as they might say, right in front of them, and they almost feel a bit intimidated. And and we've there's other things I was telling Matt before, like the driving license thing is actually, that slipped through to the keeper really. I never really thought about that much. But
explain it, Aubrey.
Well, they obviously they don't have Australian driving licenses, but more than that, the Kenyan fellow, for instance, had never driven the car, never driven a motorbike, never driven or ridden a bicycle, and that really threw me. So when he first arrived at the farm, I'd gone and bought 2 new 2-wheelers to say, righto, drive up to the dairy, we'll leave the 4-wheeler at the dairy, jump on the 2-wheeler, thinking, well, he's from Kenya, right? Everyone's ridden a motorbike, I was thinking. He probably hasn't driven a car. But so he diligently didn't tell me that he didn't get on there, and I was busy explaining clutch, gear shift, brakes, just like any motorbike, I was thinking. And then he had about 35 goes at making the thing start before I realised for his own safety, okay, we better forget about that. But so anyway, the obligation for the employer is quite significant. So we take them supermarket shopping, and we've got them on the mobile market, as they call it now. But anything they need, we have to, and that's okay, but not for 4 years. So I'm not sure about the pathway to the driving licence thing. It's going to be a difficult road.
So really, some of these almost down to the life skills, and I don't want to make that sound culturally inappropriate, but the culture is different and their life skills are different to what you've got here.
I'll give you a couple of little examples. So we provide a fully furnished house, and you sort of have to really. I mean, they're coming from overseas, and you don't know their backgrounds really. But the Kenyan fellow had never used a toaster. He'd seen it in the movies, he's saying, and he's an intelligent guy. They've never used an oven, so it's only cooktops they've used, and things that we just take for granted and didn't even think about, and so it's, in a way, it's interesting, right? It's interesting learning about their backgrounds and where they're from, but then you've sort of got the dual tension of their employer. You want them to do the job. They don't really know how to do the job, but they're getting there, and you're encouraging them, and you're also trying to tell them about Australia. And I've worked out this. They've been with me more than 6 months now. Where they've worked previously, and their attitude is really, they've come here to work. Their life is, you might say, 90% working, 10% lifestyle. Lifestyle to them is relatively insignificant. And I was talking to one of them the other day saying, look, most people in Australia, lifestyle was a much bigger percentage than that. And I said, for your own well-being, I want you to be able to enjoy the things about Australia. You get strictly 5 days on, 2 days off, and we've always done that. And I said, on the 2 days off, we'd noticed in the house, they don't even open the curtains. Little things like that you've got to let go through to the keeper, but they don't go anywhere and do anything, but they don't even. I don't think that's a frustration to them. It's actually a frustration to me, because I think you're missing out on things.
Tim, you've got a couple of sponsored positions, are they similar to Albury and Jackie's structure, and have you found the same thing, or are they more the backpacker? You're chuckling, so maybe you found a similar experience?
Yeah, look, for me it was more around providing stability on some key roles. Like, we do a lot of hoof trimming. Animal health is quite an important part of the business. So if we can have key staff that we know are there for a period of time that have the skills. So that was number one, I guess, is how can we get key people into these roles? The lack of younger Australians that want to get into the dairy. The thing I notice about the internationals, there is differentials between nationalities. Got an Indian guy and 2 Kenyans. So there's some subtle differences there, but they are grateful for a job. They're most of the time very respectful, and they got a want for knowledge. Like they really want to do well, and so I guess you can foster that. Whereas opposed to typical Australian person coming in, they just want to earn some money and go home. They don't really care what happens day to day. Whereas, you know, some of our guys are like, no, I need to stay back to fix this cow because she won't, you know, she's no good for tomorrow, or I just need to stay back and do that. I was going to say the other thing that we really try and, it's sort of not really depicted in that, but across our staff, we try and find people's strengths and put them in buckets to say, like, one person might be really good at doing water, so he controls all the water. Another guy does all our paddock rotations. Another one does all the fencing. Then we've got a mechanic. So all the day-to-day jobs that you have across a farm, there's people that get spoken to, even well below management level, saying that trough's leaking, that fence is broken, there's no power in that back paddock. 90% of the problems are fixed before I even know about them, and before the manager knows about them, because the staff have talked amongst themselves and said, oh, Stu will fix that, or Ash can go and do that.
So there's ownership around the issues.
Yeah, and so the flip side of that is it's great for me because I don't get 90% of the calls. The flip side also is that person that goes home that knows that trough's leaking, when they come in the morning, they're like, I've got to go fix that trough as soon as I get in because it's leaking. So they then take ownership on some of the jobs, and you're not trying to find them jobs every day. It's like, oh, if I'm not fixing that trough, I've got Tim wants a new water line somewhere else, or they actually have some ownership on their jobs so they can be self-sufficient when they come in. And I think that's made a really big difference. And even just the camaraderie between the staff. So, we introduced a slab rule for anyone that knocks over a gate post, because the guy that replaces them gets sick of it. But just that banter that comes around, you know, so-and-so knocked out a post, Nigel's got to replace it, but, you know, there's a slab for the Christmas party sitting there.
Dave and Penny, and I don't mind which of you answers this, but how do you deal with less hands-on to what Tim and Albury are? How do you deal with those issues of the people you've got in your looking after your assets, taking the care and the ownership around that, being so hands-off?
A couple of things. I agree with Tim in that you find the people that are good at doing jobs or like doing jobs, they're done well. The other thing too, Matt, yourself and John Mulvaney, Angus Drummond, are key people in our business. Is that level between the managers and us? Often the managers don't want to talk to us about, generally they do, but it might be an issue they're not happy about. And it comes back down through Matt and John and Angus Drummond and a few others we use. That's a big part of it. So now, what was your question again, sorry?
So there's you've got oversight, so you've got overseas, if you like, in that. Do the staff take the care? And I'll call them staff, but I mean essentially they're almost business operators in themselves because they're contractors or share farmers. They're partners, okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
They're partners. That's with the share farming. 50-50 model works particularly well, and so does a contract manager model. There's a couple of our people who've got their own farms. One in the Western District particularly has got a 300 cow farm of his own. So they do take care. They've got a lot of skin in the game. It works well that way, I think.
I think too, because they are the managers and they're Johnny on the spot, if they don't fix that trough, they're the ones who've got to deal with the fallout. You know, I mean, yes, it costs us, but they have to deal with the crap and be mud deep, you know, or knee deep in the mud.
So there's ownership, there's responsibility and there's just
Motivation.
self-interest. That's the word. Thanks, Aubrey. True self-interest in fixing the issues. Yeah.
We do make sure we provide the capital so the properties are done, maintained, or generally when we buy a place we flatten it and start again, largely with the fencing and water. So it's fairly new infrastructure, so a bit of an incentive for the people to keep everything right, a bit of pride in the job. Don't expect them to put up with old infrastructure.
We also are not frightened to spend money on maintaining infrastructure and keeping it good.
So safety is important. Keeping the infrastructure up to scratch is important. Their welfare is important. Yep.
Absolutely.
How do you deal, and I'm going to ask the question to all three members, about that growth of your employees or contractors or share farmers or whatever it might be, to allow them to grow within your business. Does your business have the opportunity for them to grow? And I might start with Tim. Or do they have to grow elsewhere?
It's a good question. I obviously think a lot, how can we do more for some of our younger staff? If you had a big bucket of cash, you'd go and buy farms for people, but it's not that easy these days. I guess the natural progression, the salary increases over time and, their bonus, sort of a discretionary bonus. But if people want to train, we'll push them to training courses and we'll try and upskill them. And some of our younger staff members I'll try and mentor along the way to say, I think you could be a really good share farmer, learn what you can from us and Mike the manager and go. But I think a lot of younger people now don't see the 5-year plan. It's more about here and now. And so I can't say that there's a really good career progression other than just taking on a bit more responsibility on the farm itself, and then we're not afraid to put people in charge of their own little segment in the business. And I think that's probably as much as anything, just giving people some ownership of a position on the business so they feel like they're important because they're in charge of water or they're in charge of the grazing roster.
And then they've got that self-interest factor, that they're looking after it because it's their responsibility.
And it's also a touch point for me with them, because I'll come and like, how'd you go with that crop? Or how'd you go with this? You can automatically start a conversation, which, there's one of our people that you walk past him in the morning and he'll almost just grunt at you. And, if you can get him engaged and talking for a minute, you won't shut him up. But if I didn't have something that I knew interests him or an area that I can't just go, well, how you going? Because it just,
Yep.
But you just get him talking for a split second on that area that he's invested in, and then you got 20 minutes, half an hour conversation. So.
Aubrey, do you think your business, or are you heading to a business model that allows for that transition? I won't call it succession as such, but transition of key employees, or do you see the short term, you and Jackie still being as pretty integral to it?
In the short term, and I guess I'm thinking 5 years, right? Probably Jackie and I are still going to be actually managing everything. We had an experience with our previous employees where I really tried to foster that. There's heaps of opportunities come through. In hindsight, it didn't work, and we probably, I've been a bit burnt by it, to be honest. We gave them calves and encouraged them. I even went to the extent of buying a book on buying property and, given their background, to really try and make them think about asset growth and the opportunities that were there, and talked about, we're getting older and things will change in the business in time, right? Actually didn't work at all. We've been a little bit burnt, and so now one of the attractive things about the international workforce is, I think they're very content they come, they've got a role, they do the job, and they've got to get a lot better at doing the job, but at the moment that's the plan. It does leave us wondering a little bit about, what we're going to do. I guess we viewed this structure we have now as the first step. We thought we actually like farming. we'll keep going. We don't know if our children will be interested in being active. We employ our son, but he doesn't like anything to do with cows. He's machinery only, and that's fine. He's only 18. So we don't really know. We thought we still enjoy a lot of the day-to-day stuff. We just want the test of it working for us is if we could be away for 7 days. At the moment, there's just no way knowing. Like one of us is Jackie's on the farm because I'm here. There's no way both of us could be here. That's the way we view it, and we might, we probably prefer things to happen how we want them to happen. That's the personality we have.
Yeah. Now, that's a good point, and I know we've got a very big contrast in probably stage of business here. How hands-on are you guys in this structure?
We like to think we can run anything, all the stuff anywhere in the world with a computer and phone, and we do. We do travel a lot, so yeah, hands off, I suppose, and just let managers do their thing and guide them.
And I know that's not saying that Aubrey's model's no good, or you need to aspire, or Tim's model, but would you guys have any advice or any cross advice or to counter advice to these guys if they wanted to, or anyone else out in the audience, if they wanted to get to this structure? And I'm not saying that you want to get to this structure, by the way, but yeah.
I think a big part of it is we don't wind our operations up too much. We're probably at 85 or 90%. Once you get above that, I feel you put a lot of pressure on people. So we're still making good returns. Everyone does everyone's got a different ambition in life too. That's a big part of it. What drives you, what gets you out of bed in the morning, what your ambitions are.
So you'd say that last 10 or 20% is what can tip things over, or tip the people over? Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, I don't think a lot of managers aren't. We've got probably one in the West, probably winding up a bit more, but that last 10% in our experience puts a lot of pressure on people. We don't have much machinery ourselves either. We're very different to a lot of people. Very little machinery is depreciating asset. I'd rather buy land or shares or commercial. It's just our way of thinking about things, and no one's wrong in what they do. That's the great thing about farming. There's so many ways of doing it, and so many successful ways of doing it, just the way we do it.
Tim, that comment, because I reckon you guys chase the last 10%, knowing how gel barts operate. Could you accept the 80% rule under a different structure, or do you think that's why your structure, works right for you guys now?
Yeah, I agree. The last 10% sometimes takes 30% to get. And it works for us because I'm a numbers person and I'm there most of the time, and systems are in place. We've got the people to support it. If I was remote, we'd probably wind it back a little bit. But one of the things I was going to say is the way we've got, staff trained in buckets and tenure. I think there's 145 years of experience on our farm at the moment, and I'm going away for a couple of weeks at the end of next week. And I don't, other than the specific projects I'm working on, I don't worry about that because I know worst I'm a phone call away, but the farm will run to 80% while I'm away. And I think that's the big thing for an owner, is to accept that mistakes happen. Things aren't going to be perfect and they're not going to be done how you would do them. And I have this never-ending battle with our mechanic about people that drive over sticks and they do this and they do that, and I agree with him, it's frustrating, but I have to accept that it's part of employing people, and you get things that break and gate posts that get run over that shouldn't have. I wouldn't have done that. But if you go and blast that person and say you're no good, you're always doing this, you don't actually achieve anything. The gate posts are still broken, and you need the staff. So I think that's where a lot of people, or some people, could improve about looking that there is going to be mistakes and shortfalls, and accepting that the farm runs to 80% when you're not there, and when you're there, hopefully you can get it to 99, 100%. But yeah, I think that's the succession for me. If I can walk away or get hit by a bus tomorrow, the farm keeps running. Yes, my brother'd have to step in and sort out some financial stuff, but the the farm and the actual business operations, despite what I think, I could be wiped out tomorrow and it'd still keep going.
And that's testament to the legacy that's been put and the structure that's been put in place and maintained and strengthened by you, Tim. Yeah, that's probably a comment rather than a question. But
it's just a springboard. Dad and Mum created it, but it's now I'm already looking to. I'm 38, and we're talking about succession for the next generation. So I've hopefully got 20 years left of me at least. But the succession talk, we're only 5 years into having inherited from Mum and Dad. And we're already having a conversation about what does this look like? What do we invest in now? Are the kids going to come home? What happens if they don't? So it's a never-ending story, I guess.
Yeah.
Could I just say too, I think for us to wind our operation up much more, it exposes us to risk, price fluctuation, input costs. So we're trying to keep our risk fairly minimal. I think you'd agree with that, Matt, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just want to touch on that. The business structure and really, I don't want to talk about anyone if they were hit by a bus tomorrow, but, would your business continue to tick along? Have you got the knowledge in the business for it to continue?
Absolutely. It doesn't need us. I mean, we go away for months at a time. I mean, sure, we do the books and we do that, but we have people in place that can make it work.
Yep.
Matt, sorry, we are pressured for time, and I'd also just like to welcome the Yarram secondary students who are sitting up the top. Unless you've got some real pivotal ones, we might go to the audience for some questions. I'll let you lead that.
Absolutely. So we are happy, and I think you guys are happy to take any questions about fairly much anything. If anything's really inappropriate, I might vet it. But, Aubrey, did you, and just to kick it off, I suppose, do you see the structure that these guys have put in place, because you're probably in that bus risk category, do you see that as somewhere that you could strengthen up your business? And then if anyone wants to ask a question from there, go for it.
Yes, I would prefer to be, closer to that scenario. In my mind, I think my level of debt is constraining me, but I could be wrong. There's probably other ways I could do it, but the way I look at it, if it was me or Jackie that wasn't in the business, it'd probably be okay. If something happened to both of us, then there'd be serious problems. Yeah.
Yep. Pete's got a question. Thanks, Pete.
Hi there, Peter Neves from Newry. Just one for David and Penny. You still see any opportunities out there at the moment, buying land, and with the prices and the interest rates, are you still looking to buy more, or are you backing off there?
I think I can safely say absolutely there's heaps of opportunities, and we're always looking, and yeah, definitely.
Yeah, or even overseas possibly, don't know yet, but there are opportunities overseas.
Did you want to follow that, Pete, with where? Because they're not letting on.
I'll just keep quiet on that.
G'day, Stu Griffin from Westbury. To Dave and Penny as well, with the structure, with that number of farms and a structure that large, I mean, I'll out myself, I'm in the same bus category as Aubrey. As far as if it all fell over, it'd be a bit of a mess. So, with it that big, how do you set, or what's your involvement in setting the big picture settings for the farms? Is it you have fair involvement in it's going to be around this number of cows, you're going to feed about this much, we're aiming to reduce this much, you guys make it happen, or does that sit and with the beef, you're going to breed this many, you're going to sell them at this time? Or is that left to the managers a bit more than those settings?
With the beef job, the managers certainly decide when to sell cattle. Well, it's fairly apparent with that side of it. The dairy stuff, the main ones in the west, they're very switched on. Kiwis, we've got a few Kiwis, they're great, really good. So he's got skin in the game, he gets more production or more profitable production. It's good for him and us. That's where the 50-50 milker works particularly well. The stuff here in the east, he's just a good, solid fellow that's been with us for years and just works. It's amazing. He's an unusual fellow, but that is now going to go to a 50-50 because that bloke doesn't want to milk cows anymore, which we respect. So. But I think the 50-50, it gives everyone incentive.
And just quick follow-up, and do you think that running at around 80% 80 to 90% makes that a bit easier? It's almost set and forget.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Oh, you say you run the farms at maybe 80 or 90%. Do you think that makes it easier to be a bit more set and forget?
I think so, yeah. 85 to 90, I'd like to say, yeah. I think so. That's our experience. A lot of machinery, a lot of people wound right up. It exposes people to risk, a lot of pressure on people. Most people don't want pressure.
I would say our general ethos is keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method.
And I think set and forget is a fair description of it, but it shouldn't be seen as negative because I think you've worked out where your profitable positions are on stocking rate, feed inputs, cow type, fertility levels that you need to drive the business. Would that be fair point?
Yeah, it's fair, but I would also say, we are available 24/7. If one of the managers wants us, they know they can ring at any time. And quite often the fellas will ring David and the women will ring me, and it's just the way it works.
Everything is benchmarked every year too, so we're working within parameters, particularly the beef stuff. And then like Matt and John Mulvaney have been extreme, and Angus Drummond and Sandy McEachran, really good people to give us an idea of where we should be at with what we're trying to do.
Matt,
Yeah.
Aaron Thomas, local dairy farmer. For someone who's about to employ all management on our farm within weeks, what advice would you have to share for myself?
I'm going to refer that to, probably to these two. So can I give a little bit of background? Stepping from management to contract management. So we're stepping across into your structure. So actually I shouldn't have just directed anyone here can answer this question. So Aaron will be employing and managing the staffing under a contract arrangement. Yeah, any pointers?
Put a contract manager and go to Queensland. Leave him to it.
Put someone like Matt in there as well. Leave them to it.
Assuming you are the contract manager,
Yeah.
so you can't just employ another person to do your job. I think make sure you do a thorough interview question and have listed out the important things to you and the things you need that person to have. So is it that the farming side of it you've got across really easily, but you need someone that's good with people? Or is it, where do you actually need the skills? Often if people have people skills, you can teach them the rest. If people have bad people skills, it's very hard to train that out of them, and I think that can affect your culture. The same thing, they're working to live, so just remember that. And just engage with them daily, regularly, and get them invested in your business, I guess. And the other takeaway is never stop looking. Often we'll employ someone, we'll have two people over what we actually need, because the inevitable is in 2 months' time someone will leave, or someone will get sick, or someone will move on. So never stop looking for the right person, because you might have someone come to you when you're fully staffed, they got awesome skills, and you say, I don't have a position. In a month's time, someone, find a position for that person, because the inevitable will happen, someone will move on. So that's my philosophy, and often I'm like, how do we find somewhere to put these people? But then in a month's time, someone comes and pulls the pin and says, I'm gone. You had no idea they're going. So never stop looking for the right person.
I'd just quickly say, spend a bit of time understanding both people's objectives and what makes them tick, because sometimes you don't quite understand, and that all goes to the expectations, why is someone working hard or not working hard, or what are you trying to achieve, what are they trying to achieve, and is the match there? It can be very subtle, of course, and I often find I work it out after a year or two, and I wish I'd known that in the first month sort of thing.
Thanks, great question, Aaron. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to add one little trick that we've learnt over the years with employing people, is to often go to their place and interview them there. because as soon as you see that front gate, you learn so much. And it's a really good just little trick to go and see them in their home environment.
I'm seeing quite a few nods out there in the audience to that one. All right, we are out of time, and I do really want to thank, and I'll get everyone to thank the panel members that make this session work.